There was a time when steel ruled the battlefield, when men wrapped in iron rode horses like gods, and battle was as much theater as it was slaughter. The knight was not just a warrior, he was the symbol of order, faith, and the divine right to rule. But one day, in the span of a single afternoon, that world died. And it wasn't slain by another knight, it was destroyed by men of mud and sweat, peasants, who held not swords, but bows of yew wood. This is the story of the day English archers ended the age of knights and changed the course of war forever. In the early 1300s, Europe was built on hierarchy. At the top, kings, lords, and knights, men who fought for honor, pride, and God. Their armor gleamed, their horses thundered across open plains, and their code, chivalry, defined what it meant to be noble. But beneath them were the forgotten, the farmers, the hunters, the bowmen, men whose hands were calloused, whose lives were short, and whose weapons were simple. For centuries, the knight's armor was invincible. Blades shattered against it, spears glanced off it. Entire armies broke upon the shield wall of mounted men encased in iron. But history always finds balance, and nature had been preparing the knight's downfall in silence. In the forests of Wales and England, where peasants practiced with the longbow was simple, a 6-foot curve of yew, nothing more than wood, sinew, and will. But in the hands of an English archer, it could pierce a man's armor at 200 yards. It required no horse, no title, no wealth, only strength, patience, and years of training. The age of iron would soon meet the power of wood. In England, archery wasn't just a skill, it was law. Every man was required to practice the bow every Sunday after church. The king himself decreed it. Let every Englishman train for the defense of the realm. By the mid-14th century, tens of thousands of Englishmen could draw a 150-pound bowstring, enough power to send a bodkin arrow straight through steel plate. These men were not nobles. They were shepherds, hunters, blacksmiths. But their weapon made them the deadliest force in Europe, and their moment would come in 1346 at a place called Crécy. August 26th, 1346. The Battle of Crécy. The French army, nearly 30,000 strong, the finest knights in Europe, armed in shining armor and mounted on war horses worth fortunes. Opposite them, a smaller English army under King Edward III, exhausted, hungry, and outnumbered 2-1. But Edward had something new, an army of archers, thousands of them, lined in rows, stakes in the ground, arrows ready. As the rain fell, the French knights advanced, banners flying, trumpets sounding, glory blinding them. They charged uphill into the wind, toward a storm of arrows. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with feathers. Arrows fell like rain, hissing through the air, striking armor, flesh, and bone. Horses screamed, men fell, banners toppled. Wave after wave of French nobility charged, and each wave died the same way. The English line never broke. The longbows never ceased. The flower of French chivalry, counts, dukes, barons, lay dead in the mud. They had charged for honor and found death instead. Crécy was more than a battle. It was an execution. The world saw for the first time that a man of no title could kill a knight of royal blood from half a field away. The longbow had rewritten the laws of war. After Crécy, Europe trembled. No armor seemed safe. No charge seemed noble. Knights began to fear peasants, and kings began to fear the men they once ruled. Because the longbow did more than pierce steel. It pierced the illusion that bloodline made men strong. Archers became the great equalizer, the weapon of the commoner that shattered the myth of divine warfare. French poets called the English butchers without honor. But deep down, they knew. Honor had lost its place on the battlefield. The knight was becoming obsolete, not by betrayal, but by progress. And yet, The final nail in chivalry's coffin would come 70 years later, in a muddy field in northern France, at a place called Agincourt, October 25th, 1415, St. Crispin's Day. King Henry V led a starving army of barely 6,000 Englishmen deep in enemy territory. Facing them, over 20,000 French soldiers, most of them knights and men-at-arms, armored from head to toe. The field was soaked with rain, turned to thick, sucking mud. The French were confident, certain they would crush the weary English. Henry placed his archers along the flanks, stakes driven into the ground to stop cavalry. Then he gave the order, "Loose!" Thousands of arrows cut the sky. The French knights advanced, but their armor, so heavy, became their coffin. They slipped, drowned in mud, trampled by their own horses. Those who reached the English line found not noble duels, but peasants with knives, finishing them in the filth. By dusk, the mud was red. Over 6,000 French lay dead, among them hundreds of noblemen, counts, and dukes. The English lost fewer than 500. Agincourt was not a battle. It was a reckoning. The age of chivalry died there, buried beneath mud and feathers. The knight, once the most feared man in Europe, became a relic. Armor grew thicker, horses fewer. Kings could no longer rely on noble blood. They needed trained armies, discipline, range, technology. The longbow gave birth to new warfare, organized ranks, range dominance, modern command. It marked the beginning of the soldier and the end of the hero. History remembers the knight as glorious, shining, and pure, but the truth is more human and more tragic. They were men trapped by their own ideals, facing a weapon that cared nothing for blood or honor. The longbow was the first machine of equality, a weapon that made all men mortal again. The English longbow would dominate Europe for over a century. It became the weapon of kings and commoners alike, a bridge between the old world of knights and the new world of nations. Its echo would be heard even in gunpowder, for every rifle that came after carried the same idea. That distance, discipline, and precision mattered more than bloodline. From Crécy to Agincourt, from chivalry to firepower, the longbow had not just ended an era, it had defined the future. One day ended an age, one weapon humbled kings, and one truth was written in blood and mud across history. No armor is invincible, no title eternal, and no empire beyond the reach of a simple arrow. If you wish to uncover more of history's hidden truths, subscribe and step once more into the dark.